the labyrinthine pathways of medieval urban centers, existence unfolded as a blend of cacophony and foul odors. Here, swine wandered alongside weary merchants, while smoke intertwined with the grounded aroma of refuse. Below the imposing stone strongholds constructed more for protection than pleasure, existence thrived within drafty chambers and chilly passageways. In the bustling market where chatter circulated as freely as sickness, a clever negotiation could alter one's destiny as certainly as the hand of a cut purse might be forfeit. Amidst the grime and grit, under the ever-present watch of divinity and fortress, a man danced through life's fleeting journey with an enduring spirit. He found himself drawn into the raw essence of medieval living, a reality both harsh and striking. A man might envision himself within the heart of a medieval city where the thoroughfares tell a story dense with noise and a particularly potent scent. Navigating these narrow tracks promised a sensory storm unlike any contemporary experience. Below his feet, cobblestones teemed with waste, while above, sellers cried out their goods amidst the perpetual din of bells ringing from distant spires. Yet it was the scent that truly captured the core of medieval existence, a powerful mix of humanity, smoke, and the inescapable presence of waste. This tumultuous combination of sound and smell became the backdrop for a city constantly close to the edge of survival. Refuse was inescapable, sculpting the urban landscape into something sharply distinct from our modern, sanitized present. Lacking any structured sanitation system, streets became actual channels for filth. Human and animal waste were carelessly tossed from windows, following only the force of gravity to land in the gutters beside the cobblestones. Such casual disposal was more than a mere detail of city life. It dictated daily choices on where a man might walk or establish his trade. Disease flourished amidst this open sewage. Yet for a man of the time, it was simply another part of the shared narrative of resilience and vulnerability that characterized medieval living. Sharing these roads with men were animals roaming freely, blurring the distinction between the wild and the domestic. Chief among these urban inhabitants were pigs, acting as opportunistic scavengers in a rudimentary form of waste management. Their presence represented a duality of usefulness and nuisance, contributing significantly to sanitation while also spreading disruption and illness. The relationship between medieval citizens and these animals was one of practical coexistence born of necessity. This intermingling with livestock eventually prompted early urban planning efforts, signaling the first hints of progress towards a more ordered future. And then there was the air, a heavy blanket woven with the countless pollutants of daily routine. Fires for warmth and cooking, blacksmiths' forges releasing smoke, and lime kilns emitting their noxious gases. Each contributed to a persistent, unavoidable industrial haze. This thick atmosphere clung to his clothing and entered his lungs, enveloping the city in a perpetual dimness. Yet there was a strange appeal in the smoky veil that softened harsh realities. In that obscured world, the streets seemed untouched by time, offering a sense of mystic escape where superstition and survival intertwined to form a singular urban fabric. Beneath this pervasive shroud, the city was marked by its smells, distinct indicators of labor and craft, as if the very trades had permeated the stone and wood. Blacksmiths announced their presence with the sharp tang of heated metal, while tanneries broadcast their location with the harsh odor of decaying materials. Bakers provided a welcome contrast with the warm fragrance of fresh bread, standing sharply against markets reeking of fish. This sensory map etched onto the cityscape was not just proof of livelihoods, but a subtle yet profound connection to the daily rhythms of life in a medieval world. Hygiene, contrary to common misconceptions, was not entirely ignored, but practiced within the limitations of culture and resources. Public bathing took place in communal baths or rivers. Although such actions were often determined by social rank and rooted more in ritual than routine, for many, a simple cloth moistened with rose water or vinegar served as daily cleansing. Cleanliness, both spiritual and physical, was ironically juxtaposed, creating a peculiar balance where divine purity seemed to overshadow earthly dirt. Within these foul-smelling confines, homes mirrored the city's broader sensory assault. Cramped, damp, and poorly lit, they housed multiple families in small areas, separated crudely by thin walls or none at all. The air within was stagnant, a mixture of humanity pressed into close quarters, creating a living refuge as susceptible as it was resilient. Despite the discomfort, these dwellings stood as resilient anchors of family life and social structure. The hardship fostered communal bonds where generations learned the demands of life from their elders, forging strength from shared difficulty. Guilds orchestrated this urban harmony, shaping its social and economic pace. Men working as leather tanners or bakers aligned under guilds which regulated the quality and practice of their trades, filling the streets with the distinct sounds and smells of busy activity. Beyond economics, guilds solidified community ties, their influence noticeable in the structured lanes and harmonious disorder that defined medieval urban existence. Yet in this vivid depiction of resilience and community, stark divisions cast long shadows. Wealth could slightly distance some men from the shared burden of filth, with the privileged able to manage waste disposal or mask odors with fragrances. But for most men, waste remained an unyielding equalizer, a reminder of mortality and a clear reflection of societal inequalities. The psychological impact was lasting, encouraging resilience amidst continuous sensory bombardment. The vitality of medieval life was evident in its disparities, illustrating a society strong in the face of hardship and linked symbolically to the odor that told their tales of survival. This depiction of struggle and endurance suggests not merely a story of past existence, but echoes of human perseverance within the sensory maze known as the medieval city. In the core of medieval landscapes, castles loomed like silent sentinels. Their stone walls whispered tales of both might and danger. The imposing architecture, with its battlements and tall towers, was designed for defense. The massive walls, often many feet thick, stood firm against the onslaught of siege engines and scaling ladders. Drawbridges spanned moats with a practiced skill, opening and closing as if choreographed for dramatic effect. Arrow slits dotted the walls, narrow and threatening, allowing defenders a chance to rain arrows upon unseen foes below. While these strongholds projected an image of invincibility and cold authority, they were in constant competition with advancements in siege technology. The trebuchet, a formidable war machine, emerged as a powerful equalizer, capable of hurling massive stones and causing walls to collapse. Yet within these stone fortresses, life itself was severe and demanding. The great halls often appeared vast and stark, far from the exquisite luxury a man might imagine. Stone floors bore witness to every step, often softened only by straw spread occasionally to deter infestation by unwelcome guests of the rodent variety. In these drafty domains, torches cast flickering shadows, offering some comfort during cold nights as the light danced off walls covered in faded tapestries. The endless corridors snaked through the fortress like a maze intended more for defense than convenience, with thick walls that absorbed any warmth provided by sparse hearths. Bedrooms remained functional, featuring canopy beds with heavy curtains to shield sleeping nobles from drafts that whispered along stone surfaces. To sustain life within these walls required tireless effort and ingenuity. Kitchens, buzzing centers of activity, held a crucial role, with vast hearths that roasted meat and simmered hearty stews. Smokehouses preserved meats while cellars stored salted provisions, transforming the castle into a self-sufficient entity capable of withstanding lengthy sieges. In the castle's underground areas, workshops clattered with industry. Blacksmiths struck iron, shaping it into weapons of war and tools necessary for living. Woodshops produced everything from furniture to repair scaffoldings, while the pungent odor of tanneries testified to the transformation of hide into leather, ready to protect knights against enemies and the elements. As dusk drew its shadows tighter against the landscape, the castle transformed into a world of vigilance and mystery, where guards donned their own cloaks to combat both potential threats and the superstitions lurking through chilled stone corridors. The night watch was a test of nerve, where every sound could signal danger. Gloom and legends converged, turning everyday life into a story dressed as reality. Whispered tales of spirits mingled with watchful eyes. Guards maintained their posts on parapets as torches flickered against hiding shadows, their breath misting the night air as mythical stories unfolded in the uneasy quiet. Amidst this setting, feasting was both a spectacle and a calculated act. The Great Hall served as the center of medieval life, where each meal presented an extravagant display of hierarchy and ceremony. Decorated meats were paraded before tables of noblemen, tempting with spices and exotic presentation. Knives and spoons were used to portion food among diners' fingers, with etiquette weaving narratives of alliance and power. Here, lightheartedness met formality, where minstrels added music to the whispered conversations that occurred between sips of wine drawn from communal goblets. In stark contrast, further from the high table's prominence, more meager portions awaited servants and lower-ranked guests, highlighting the disparities woven into the social structure. Heraldic art adorned these stone walls with depictions of colorful creatures woven into banners and displayed on shields proclaiming lineage and loyalty. Against a backdrop of chaos and the struggle for dominance, these emblems provided continuity and identity for a man. Inside, tapestries hung like silent narrators on cold stone, depicting layers of medieval life through religious imagery or turbulent battles of the past. Each stitch embedded whispers of virtue, sin, power, and sanctity. Within these stone fortresses, ambition simmered alongside the hearthfires. Politics echoed through shadowy corners along with calculated whispers, weaving intrigue and acts of deception. As schemes developed in courtyards and echoing halls, conflicts continued beyond battlefield victories. Here, allegiance was like dry tinder, liable to ignite and be extinguished as rumors of fortune manipulated destinies. In the shadows cast by towering walls, in contrast to these power plays, justice was enacted swiftly without delay. Within castle yards stood the stocks and pillories, a tangible deterrent, visible reminders of power's reach and authority's scope. As verdicts were delivered, those deemed guilty faced arbitrary punishments. Their fate was sealed in dungeons beneath these towering structures, where mercy intertwined with history's silent judgment. Yet not all life within was severe. Music and merriment brightened fortresses, where minstrels' ballads and jesters' jokes injected moments of lightheartedness into the seriousness against stone walls heavy with significance. Laughter rang out like a defiant tune amidst the graver concerns invited to linger. Festivals and feasts were joyous occasions, bringing forth music amidst constraints and sowing comfort within confined spaces. In this realm, where stone met weariness, song lightened hearts and recast burdens in the light of shared human joy. Amid stone fortresses, protecting life from the elements was a perpetual battle. Winters encroached with biting winds, necessitating fires to combat the unyielding cold as residents dressed in layers of fur and wool. Come summer, the stone turned into an oven, absorbing heat and amplifying discomfort. Yet amidst hardships, each season brought gifts, a reminder of life's cycle beneath unchanging stone skies, a narrative that endured beyond simple survival. A tale forever unfolding until silence descended with the dusk. The medieval marketplace was the vital center of its era, a chaotic stage where lives intersected through trade and community. As dawn broke, merchants unfurled their stalls of timber and cloth, transforming them into vibrant displays of human effort. The air vibrated with the sounds of deals being struck, a blend of voices haggling, the jingle of coins being exchanged, and the occasional clang from a nearby blacksmith's anvil. Carts trundling through narrow aisles carried barrels of ale and grain, carving a path through crowds of villagers, their blending dialects and spices adding to the market's lively chatter. It was more than just buying and selling, it was theater. Beneath this commotion, however, shadows of mistrust lingered. Here, honesty and deceit walked side by side, with shrewd vendors navigating the fine line between legality and trickery. Hierarchies emerged not only of wealth, but of reputation, built one transaction at a time for a man. Yet among this lively disorder lay peculiarities reflecting the medieval mix of wonder and commerce. Stalls selling everyday items stood alongside those offering trinkets and charms intended to ward off evil spirits or ensure fertile fields. Superstition permeated every transaction, adding mystical layers to ordinary exchanges. More somberly, some stalls dealt in human bones, presented as holy relics, connecting the earthly and the divine. Lurking behind the lively commerce, the marketplace also served as a stage for justice, or a semblance of it. Public punishment was common, turning grievances into spectacles. A man might see a thief's fate sealed at the pillory by mid-morning, a stark reminder of laws both arbitrary and severe. Here, a deaf ear might be the penalty for a secretive hand. Markets took on a darker aspect, and innocence was constantly under suspicion. The marketplace was also a haven for stories, a hotbed of gossip warmer than a baker's oven. Information spread as freely as merchandise. Secrets changed hands with the same urgency as fresh produce. A farmer might hear news of a nobleman's latest folly, while a merchant might catch the latest court scandal. Narrative intertwined with necessity, a verbal exchange as crucial as coin. But in this echoing gallery, words held power, as volatile as the night's shadows. An offhand remark could escalate into a lethal rumor. False mischief spread quicker than a torch to hay. Missteps in speech could undo fortunes and reputations, turning allies into enemies in a fleeting moment. This unpredictable web of trade and hearsay gave the market its unique rhythm. Alongside commerce and conversation, the market square also functioned as a grim theater for the enforcement of law, where spectacle merged with society's need for order. Punishments carried out in plain view served dual purposes, discouraging crime while offering the populace morbid entertainment. Thieves and forgers found themselves unwilling actors in morality plays, their humiliations concluding amidst circling vendors, rearranging their stalls for the best view. These public displays reinforced shared societal values and reminded all that justice, however crude, was visible to the public eye. The marketplace thus became a hub where lessons in morality were learned as keenly as lessons in trade. A peculiar aspect lay in the trials of animals, events conducted with surreal formality that seem utterly implausible today. Imagine a pig accused of harming a child, shackled before a legally sanctioned audience, facing an unlikely trial under the scrutiny of an attentive jury. Such occasions reveal the medieval man's effort to impose order on chaos, a desperate attempt at cosmic justice. Yet these proceedings also reveal the town's need for ritual purification and reassurance of an overarching moral framework. For traders and visitors, the marketplace was a symphony of sensory overload. The noise of bustling crowds rose and fell with the intensity of wind, punctuated by the shouts of merchants praising their goods. A pervasive backdrop of cartwheels and the gentle tolling of church bells underscored this continuous hum. Overhead, the scent of wood smoke mingled with the sharper aroma of leather, fresh vegetables, and wool. Pungency rose from stalls laden with salted fish, while the sweetness of spilled ale clung to the cobblestones. Yet even here, hidden dangers lurked. With no understanding of germ theory, the market's crowded conditions were fertile ground for illness. Each man was a potential carrier of contagion, from common colds to deadly plague. Illness often traveled the routes of commerce. As dangerous as disease was human deceit, with nimble-fingered pickpockets weaving through unsuspecting crowds. Thus, market-goers engaged in a subtle choreography, balancing vigilance with vulnerability. This setting also provided a stage for social rituals and class distinctions. From the elaborate attire of noblemen to the practical clothing of peasants, every interaction spoke of underlying hierarchies. Though their lives intertwined, they mirrored the societal structure. Merchants depended on peasants for produce, peasants on nobility for protection. In this temporary convergence, status could be briefly suspended, needs redefining social boundaries, if only for an instant. Beyond the routine, markets hosted vibrant festivals and fairs where life paused for splendor and revelry. Celebrations transformed ordinary stalls into kaleidoscopes of color and joy, with musicians and performers injecting wonder into work areas. The fairs reflected the aspirations and anxieties of men whose vibrancy belied the stone facades and rigid customs constraining them daily. Thus, the medieval marketplace was a microcosm encapsulating the era's contradictions, a juxtaposition of luxury and necessity, of fear and festivity, powerfully condensed into a singular, compelling spectacle. Even amidst its complexities, one simple truth remained. Within the marketplace's noisy heart, life's good and grim thrived, echoing through the ages. The imposing exterior of a medieval castle often concealed the stark realities within its formidable walls. Contrary to romantic notions of opulence, castles were primarily designed for defense rather than comfort. In winter, the chill permeated the stone, and in summer there was little relief from the stuffy air. Echoes of footsteps lingered in the stone halls, reminders of their practical, machine-like purpose. Tapestries attempted to soften the harshness, but drafts wound through every crevice. Though noblemen found refuge from outside chaos, they were confined by these stone boundaries. Daily life was a relentless cycle of maintenance and survival. The grandeur visible from outside faded upon entry, where the smells of kitchens mingled with the scent of sweat. Servants bustled about, tending fires, carrying out necessary tasks without pause. These walls were not covered in luxury. They resonated with the labors of those who rarely experienced downtime. Dining was a ceremonial affair, revealing intricate social hierarchies. Meals displayed with strict protocols were more about rank than comfort. Dishes were displays of wealth. The more exotic the offering, the higher the host's prestige. This theatrical table reinforced social order rather than merely allowing gluttonous indulgence. An army of servants toiled invisibly to uphold this grandeur. Floor scrubbers, chambermaids, and cooks formed the backbone. Their labor went unnoticed until their absence made it conspicuous. From dawn, firewood was gathered, corridors swept, and work began before nighttime rest had fully ended. Servitude had its own hierarchy. Chamberlains and butlers commanded a domestic legion, ensuring the household's high standing. The disparity between the toil below and the pomp above highlighted the social gap ingrained in castle life. Life behind the walls unfolded under the heavy mantle of protocol. Noblemen adhered to a schedule as inflexible as the stonework. Their lives were dictated by governance, estate management, and political maneuvering. Ceremonies punctuated their time. Morning mass, midday councils, afternoon hunts, and evening feasts marked the passage of days. Even leisure involved expectation. Hunts were like military rehearsals, and falconry showcased control. Every gesture was intentional, measured under the gaze of watchful anticipation. Amidst privilege, the struggle for warmth and comfort was ongoing, a battle against the starkness of stone. Solar rooms bathed in morning sunlight were scarce refuges, their reprieve brief. Fires crackled in great hearths, offering more psychological than actual warmth. Layer upon layer of heavy cloth provided insulation against the cold, removed only when summer permitted. Each season reshaped life, tasks altered according to nature's whim. An intricate social order, as complex as political alliances, governed every action within the castle. Etiquette was deeply ingrained, its importance akin to ritual. Missteps in table manners or addressing peers could lead to political disgrace for a man. Etiquette extended beyond social gatherings, encompassing ideals of chivalry. The castle's inner sanctum, restricted to the elite, was a fortress within a fortress, where intrusion amounted to defilement. These codes guarded against external chaos, fostering alliances within. Noble women navigated constraints, wielding limited authority subtly. Educated in diplomacy and alliances, their roles were crucial yet confined. From the shadows, they orchestrated interactions, cementing political ties. Some ascended to power through strategic marriages, adept in social intelligence and resilience. While the patriarchal shadow loomed, some fortified influence, crafted strategies, and shifted noble standings. Conformity and resistance blended into the social fabric, shaping the power structure of medieval society. Noble children's lives combined privilege with restriction. Boys trained for their future roles were taught weaponry, family law, and statecraft. Responsibility pressed upon young ideals of valor inscribed by their fathers' legacies. Girls expected to form alliances learned courtly conduct and domestic arts, shaping them for family strategy. Isolation tinged childhood routines despite the care of nursemaids. Lives unfolded amidst laughter and tears, sheltered yet subject to political or familial upheavals. The lure of power shone from thrones, yet it was more binding than liberating. A nobleman's influence was a sharp yet precarious blade. Prestige was protection, exerted through vigilance across regions and kin. Authority was arbitration. Individuals were bound to communal commitments. The scrutiny of court life meant passivity risked obsolescence. Maintaining the balance of power meant navigating court intrigue, a dance beneath the watchful eyes and corridor shadows. Daily life ebbed and flowed, marked by bells. Mundane repetition blended with grandeur. Cycles provided stability. Dawn heralded work among an orderly scene. bustling activity merged with competence. Beyond this, the day's remnants held scarce autonomy. Personal expression was woven into moments in the chapel, garden, or library. Social engagements filled the voids, bridging private thoughts far beyond. Arms clanged on training grounds, life shifting with familiar echoes. This dynamic rhythm of living under stone and sky captured the enduring continuity beneath steadfast towers and whispered sagas. As the first light of dawn crept over the thatched roofs of a medieval village, the rooster's crow summoned weary men to another day of relentless toil. The morning mist mingled with the earthy scent of pastures and smoke from distant fires, a tangible marker of a life entwined with labor. For a peasant, a day off was an alien concept, for each day mirrored the next, a cycle of necessity that began before the sun had fully risen. Simplicity reigned at breakfast. Cold porridge or crusty bread, a humble prelude to the arduous tasks awaiting outside the door. Clad in wooden clogs, villagers trudged toward fields that beckoned with their demands, where the call of the seasons dictated every action. Planting, tending, harvesting, an eternal cycle that sustained life itself, but offered little in the way of ownership for those who toiled upon it. The labor clung to the land, embedding itself in the farmer's calloused hands and sweat-streaked face. Spring's chill demanded the breaking of frost-nipped soil, while summer's sun scorched dust-laden faces as scythes swished through ripe wheat, the air thick with particles that turned skin to a gritty bronze. Autumn's harvest, both valued and demanding, saw fields busy with grain-laden wagons, each bushel the result of painstaking effort, while winter's chill necessitated attention to livestock and tool repairs. This seasonal grind, an uninterrupted testament to survival, had been the way for generations, binding men in a dance of fatigue and sustenance, where days blurred seamlessly into one another. Beyond farming, villages bustled with the industry of craftsmen. Blacksmiths hammered red-hot iron, cobblers stitched rough leather, and workshops vibrated with the sound of tools, the sharp rasp of whetstones, the rhythmic clang of hammers on anvils. These were the sounds of survival, echoing commerce and life. Skilled hands, weathered and work-worn, labored not just to meet daily needs, but to earn coins that could mean the difference between plenty and hunger. Trade was the lifeline that drew men away from their fields into bustling markets, places teeming with barter, negotiation, and rare tales of foreign lands. Here, the seller's art of persuasion was paramount, as every transaction intertwined necessity and cunning. Market fairs, vibrant and chaotic, displayed wares from afar, contrasting sharply with monotonous daily labor, yet underscoring the unending work ethic, even in moments of social exchange. Women's labor, though often less publicly visible, was equally formidable. Their hands knew the earth's yield, toiling in fields alongside men, yet their domains stretched to hearth and home. Fires needed tending, gardens required care, and ale, a household staple, had to be brewed. Tasks of spinning, weaving, and sewing not only clothed families, but also served as currency and barters, bridging the gap between survival and domesticity. Underappreciated and often unrecorded, these women wove a tapestry of life that was crucial to the community's endurance. Yet the mill stood apart as an emblem of communal obligation. Whether powered by wind or water, the medieval mill converted grain to flour, a daily staple for all classes. The miller, guardian of this vital machine, wielded power and prestige, controlling a critical link in the chain of survival for a man. The endless turning of great wheels within dusty confines demanded constant upkeep and political savvy, as noblemen often watched jealously over milling rights. Wrapped in flour-laden air, millers endured the common cough associated with their trade, a daily reminder of their indispensable role in this agricultural world. In the shadowy outskirts of towns, tanners practiced an unglamorous but essential trade. Stench and grime marked their labor, an alchemy of animal hides transformed into leather with the aid of foul solutions made from urine and fermented brains. A concoction of ancient chemistry, this craft required both skill and endurance, yielding materials vital for garments, harnesses, and footwear, items that channeled the relentless march of medieval life. Though their trade often faced popular distaste, without their skill, society's wardrobe would be scant, ill-prepared for the rigors of medieval existence. While peasants and craftsmen labored on land, minstrels wandered the wide roads bearing tales, songs, and histories. These itinerant entertainers traversed courts and countries, weaving performances that united disparate social classes. In their melodies and myths lay moments of respite from the grinding routine of daily life, each note a lifeline binding listeners in momentary joy. They bridged the gap between noble and commoner. Yet their road was fraught with uncertainty, relying on the fickle hospitality of strangers to sustain their art. Underground, miners chipped and hacked at unyielding rock, extracting metals and minerals vital to the kingdom's wealth. In their dark world of peril and dust, caves echoed with the strikes of iron, each stroke haunted by the constant specter of cave-ins and flooding. Miners emerged into daylight from the jaws of the earth, hearts and chests heavy with the risks inherent in their occupation, their efforts foundational to the society they served. Nearer the coast, fishermen and mariners faced the ocean's unpredictable moods. Living at the mercy of wind and wave, sea salt etched their skin as their boats navigated treacherous waters in search of sustenance. The sea's bounty provided livelihood, though every journey posed untold dangers for a man. Mariners, carriers of trade, braved open waters to link distant lands, their songs recounting ventures fraught with both peril and promise. In the midst of ceaseless labor, communities clung to glimmers of hope sparked by festivals and revelries marking the seasons. Harvest dictated feast or famine, determined by the whims of weather and fate. Yet between sweat and soil, laughter and song offered solace, binding men in shared experiences and dreams of brighter tomorrows. Medieval village life was built on a bedrock of endurance, yet within its daily grind, the indomitable human spirit continued to sow seeds of joy and resilience, where hope illuminated even the darkest of days. In the medieval world, the church stood like the walls of a great city, encompassing every aspect of life within its shadow. From the smallest hamlet to the largest city, towering spires dotted the landscape, casting shadows over bustling markets and quiet homes. The day for a man started with the tolling of bells, summoning the faithful to prayer and setting the rhythm of daily life. The church's calendar, a meticulous schedule of feasts and fasts, governed the seasons, dictating when to celebrate and when to reflect. Religion was more than private devotion. It shaped every communal experience. The church provided education, healthcare, and welfare, standing as the central institution in a world where fate seemed as unpredictable as the weather. At its heart was the promise of order through its divine hierarchy. For the common man, the church represented both hope and judgment. His eternal soul, he was told, hung in a delicate balance. The tales of saints and sinners shared in Sunday sermons painted vivid scenes of a paradisiacal reward for the pious and heinous torment for the wicked. Though knowledge of Latin, the sacred tongue, remained the domain of clerics and scholars, the lay people engaged with the faith through captivating rituals and sensory experiences. Stained glass windows transformed biblical tales into vibrant art, while the sweet yet smoky incense provided a heavenly aroma, offering the faithful a fragrant preview of the celestial. In this world where poverty was rampant and the future uncertain for a man, the church's promise of an afterlife was not just a spiritual comfort, it was a beacon of hope. Possessing what were said to be miraculous abilities, sacred relics drew pilgrims across vast territories. Their promise of divine intervention felt as inviting as a cool drink on a sweltering day. Pilgrimage routes were fraught with peril, yet many men undertook the journey hoping to glimpse a saintly digit encased in golden splendor, or to touch a worn garment believed to cure ailments. These expeditions fostered unity, with entire villages sometimes traveling together, their tattered clothes sewn into collective banners of faith. Towns housing sacred relics transformed into bustling centers, their renown and prosperity growing in step with the perceived power of their collections. Although the authenticity of relics was often questionable, with items like angel feathers or hermit toes traded in crowded markets, skepticism was typically overshadowed by belief. A man clung to these tangible links to the divine as a way to fill the existential emptiness left by an unpredictable world. The narratives of saints bridge the gap between the divine and the earthly, making them accessible and relatable. Regarded as intermediaries, these revered figures received prayers for rain, safety in combat, and spiritual guidance. Often portrayed with human imperfections, their stories of doubt, perseverance, and courage resonated deeply with a populace accustomed to hardship. Statues and icons of saints filled churches and homes, serving as moral guides and sources of communal identity. Through their stories, saints became symbols of resistance and hope in an often brutal world, providing narratives that comforted and inspired. In a society where sin was believed to invite both earthly disaster and eternal damnation, acts of penance served as public displays of remorse and purification. Misdeeds required atonement, not solely through prayer, but through acts of physical self-denial. Flagellation and fasting were accepted forms of devotion, practices viewed as pathways toward divine purity. Yet beneath this veneer of spiritual discipline, the Church wielded considerable influence to control and regulate. Its pervasive reach extended to the deeply personal act of confession, a ritual that offered believers a means to confess sins and seek divine forgiveness. This intensely personal sacrament brought to light moral failings as penitents whispered their transgressions within the shadowed confessionals. The absolution granted by priests, akin to a rumored golden ticket to salvation, cemented the Church's role as the arbiter of morality. However, this sacred space could easily turn into public censure, the whispered words of confession sometimes spreading outward to reinforce social order and ecclesiastical authority. Amidst these spiritual practices, fear of the supernatural, particularly witches, intertwined with religious teachings, fostering a fervor that poisoned social relations. Witches served as convenient scapegoats for misfortune. Their trials were brutal and unforgiving spectacles. In contrast, superstitions flourished alongside faith, with charms and talismans offering simple reassurances in a world still largely mysterious. Constructing a church was more than a building project. It was a communal undertaking. These sacred structures grew stone by stone, testaments to human ambition and religious devotion. Craftsmen carved narratives into the very walls, while stained glass filtered sunlight into biblical hues. However, the resources required often stood in sharp contrast to the harsh realities of peasant life. Yet, the communal spirit endured, binding societies in a shared vision. Throughout this period, the arts thrived under the Church's patronage. Painters, sculptors, and poets infused the grand narratives of Christianity into every brushstroke and chisel mark, translating complex theology into relatable stories. In doing so, they expanded the medieval experience, allowing believers to engage with divine stories beyond ritualistic confines. The chapter concludes, but the echoes of medieval life persist, intriguing reminders of a world governed by the sacred in all its complex, messy humanity. In a medieval world often ruled by unpredictability and forceful will, justice could be as arbitrary as the wind. Trial by ordeal was a stark illustration of this uncertainty, where divine judgment was believed to manifest through the physical suffering of the accused. These trials, whether by hot iron or submerged limbs, forced individuals into terrifying confrontations where faith wrestled with pain. Men gathered in crowds, their faces marked with a mix of fascination and dread, as a priest's prayers sought divine intervention. The outcome depended less on guilt or innocence, and more on the interpretation of celestial will, leaving the accused to face not only their own fears, but the capricious nature of communal belief. Public executions unfolded as orchestrated displays of power, where the ending of a life served less as punishment and more as a reminder of authority's reach. Executioners, cloaked in commanding figures, transformed public squares into theaters of terror. Gallows stood starkly against the sky, their grim silhouettes a constant reminder of the consequences of defiance for a man. Fear was a tool honed and wielded to align society under the shadow of retribution. This violent display served a dual purpose, asserting authority's dominance and recalibrating the social fabric through visceral lessons, etched directly upon the consciousness of all who witnessed. Feudal lords administered justice with a personal touch that was both immediate and terrifying. To live under their rule meant submitting to justice that was often swift, colored by whims and personal vendettas. Disputes could escalate into brutal displays of power where the Lord's decree was unquestioned and absolute law for a man. These were exchanges where personal feuds masqueraded as justice, and authority was a dance of grim elegance. Plots were hatched and lives altered at a lord's casual whim or firm decision. This autocratic justice underscored both the protection and the perils inherent in feudal hierarchy. Yet within the tapestry of legal enforcement, church courts wove threads of spiritual oversight. These ecclesiastical courts delved into matters of morality, marriage, heresy, and piety, areas often beyond the secular grasp of feudal lords. Here, bishops interpreted divine will through the lens of law, where penance mirrored punishment. The church's justice was a gentler hand in theory, but one that could wield fire and fear in practice, pursuing heresy with unyielding zeal. This placed the accused in a crucible of divine expectation, where mercy and judgment traversed a delicate balance anchored in religious dogma. The witch hunts of the era remain one of history's most chilling reminders of how swiftly fear and suspicion could turn neighbor against neighbor. Communities rattled by poor harvests or plagues sought scapegoats among those who seemed different. Midwives, widows, and sometimes simply eccentric individuals, spurred by societal terror and the church's fervor to expel evil, these hunts became dark spectacles of accusation and confession. They were cruel events drawing the community into hysteria, condemning innocence in the smoke of burning pyres that whispered of human fragility and societal chaos. Medieval punishments aimed not only to discipline, but to leave lasting marks on the body, serving as a testament to both the crime and the reach of authority. Bodies branded or maimed bore silent witness to a life outside the bounds of trust and decency. Severed hands and tongues spoke volumes, not only of sins committed, but of power strategies. These gruesome marks were a tangible reminder of authority's vigilance, rituals that both scarred the individual and impressed lasting lessons upon the communal conscience. For the nobility, the concept of justice often found expression in duels, where questions of honor descended into brutal contests. Shields clashed, swords sang, where noble restraint purportedly presided. The dance between life and death unfolded with stark ferocity. This was justice amidst grandeur, cloaked in chivalric guise, yet driven by the raw fundamentals of human conflict, where valorous display masked the primal brutality of blade-meeting flesh. Duels underpinned a justice system in which the elite forged their own laws, fighting as much with honor as for it. Living on the fringes were outlaws, figures both condemned by officialdom and secretly admired by the peasantry. These bandits, toughened by necessity, inhabited the wilderness, forging legends amidst the harsh law. Men like Robin Hood and his ilk, whether real or mythical, encapsulated the tension between oppression and rebellion. For many a man, they stood as echoes of justice's failures, elusive figures of survival beyond the rigid confines of legality, living embodiments of the line between necessity and crime. Within the solemn courts, jesters danced upon the precarious edge of truth and absurdity. Their sharp wit and pointed humor could disarm the most steadfast judgments, offering critiques wrapped in laughter. While their primary role was entertainment, jesters wielded an unspoken influence, subtly guiding justice through their absurd quips. This rare freedom allowed folly to expose hypocrisy, their humor serving as both a shield and a quiet catalyst, nudging the rudder of justice with a clown's grace. The medieval legal framework, riddled with irony and contradiction, often led justice down paths where logic faltered. In the same world where a pig might stand trial, a thief's severed hand could itself face judgment. Even as the era's castles and chapels spoke of grandeur, they stood alongside a legal ethos tied inextricably to both superstitions and ruthless practicalities, all weaving a complex narrative of human fallibility, belief, and the earnest search for a semblance of order amidst the chaos. In the shadowed passageways of the medieval world, fear often wore the face of disease. Chief among these was the Black Death, a specter that defied nature with its swift brutality. A man would picture plague carts creaking along cobbled streets, burdened with bodies, an unavoidable reminder of mortality. This relentless, unseen killer swept through villages, leaving behind eerie silences and orphaned children. Funeral rites, once sacred, gave way to hurried mass burials, a grim necessity in a world reeling from loss. The plague's horror inspired desperate, varied reactions. Some men saw divine wrath for sins, others blamed the stars or foreign poisons. Attempts to fend off the disease, such as carrying sweet herbs or lighting purifying fires, seemed futile. Grim stories were told of homes barricaded with the living trapped inside or families torn apart by grief's madness. This invisible plague unveiled life's fragility, revealing how far humanity was willing to reach, blindly stumbling for meaning. Fire, though distinct from disease, was an equally relentless threat. Medieval towns, largely built from wood and thatch, were disasters waiting to happen. The smallest flame could sweep through like a hungry beast, turning homes, hopes, and heritage to ash. A man would imagine the dread upon waking to the acrid scent of smoke, skies painted red, and the frantic cries of neighbors battling to save what little they could. Fire threatened not just the body, but the societal bonds etched into community life. Yet fire was also essential. It cooked meals and fended off winter's chill, embodying a duality of necessity and threat. Firefighting was a collective chaos, a human chain of buckets and futile resistance. Without insurance or aid, reconstruction relied on charity, on the benevolence of a local lord, or indeed on the very victim's resilience. Though flames threatened to erase the familiar, they also forged strength, binding communities tighter through shared catastrophe. Medieval eyes often turned skyward, fearing omens from the heavens. Comets and red moons became sinister harbingers, signs of war, pestilence, or corruption. Astrology, now a quaint historical curiosity, once shaped medicine, politics, and everyday life for a man. It provided a flawed framework through which people sought comfort amidst chaos. Celestial events united communities in shared ritual and awe, reminding them they were part of a vast, unfathomable cosmos, strangely connected to their daily struggles. War, a specter that haunted medieval life, was more than just battles. It was an incessant struggle for power, an unseen conflict as ideological as physical. Soldiers, some mere boys, feared disease and hunger more than the sword. Warfare's disruption left villages plundered and families torn, scattering lives like leaves. Those unfit for arms still felt its grip, pressed into service or burdened with resource provision. Yet, amidst this turmoil, tales of heroism and betrayal were woven into the cultural fabric, offering a shared narrative to endure ongoing discord. Beyond the Black Death loomed other illnesses: smallpox, leprosy, tuberculosis, prowling unseen. Medieval medicine, with its grim cures of bloodletting and purging, was harsh and often more feared by a man than the illness itself. The sick became societal outcasts, sent on pilgrimages in the hopes of divine intervention. Where science faltered, survival relied as much on divine favor as it did on human spirit, with communities rallying to support the afflicted, blurring the line between care and contagion avoidance. Famine, another relentless companion, sent malnutrition stalking through the land. A poor harvest could erase a village. Mothers sacrificed meals for children. Stew pots were stretched thin with whatever could be scavenged. Desperation twisted morality. Fields were raided, game laws disregarded. The fortunate fed the less so, knowing winter could swiftly change fortunes. Famine imparted lessons in resilience, carving its mark into memory and folklore, shaping the very worldview of those who endured. Adaptation grew from necessity, giving rise to innovation. Buildings evolved with fireproofing layers of clay and stone. Crop rotation became a salvation for soil. Guilds offered solidarity and support through crisis, illustrating a pragmatic resilience. Though regionally varied, these innovations echoed persistence and creativity amidst hardship. Shared stories of overcoming adversity illuminated paths through the darkness, a testament to an innately adaptable spirit. Superstition thrived in this world of barely contained chaos. Charms and rituals offered a semblance of control, a hedge against the unknowable. Amulets and incantations, relics and rites became woven into life's fabric. Yet superstition carried the weight of its own darkness, kindling fear and suspicion that fed scapegoating and violence. These beliefs reveal a complex web of fear and faith for a man, a reminder of the struggle to find reason where little seemed to exist. Even as disease and disaster prowled and night invited unseen fears, medieval laughter endured. Behind tavern doors, humor thrived, dark, ironic, and sharp. Bawdy tales, satirical songs, and biting jokes helped people cope. This grim humor critiqued society, offering solace amidst harsh realities. Peasants shared knowing laughter about landlords or priests' follies, finding camaraderie in shared discontent. Amidst darkness, humanity clung to humor as a shield, preserving not just sanity but a vibrant connection to one another, a timeless testament to resilience. In the secluded corners of medieval life, beneath the prominent gaze of patriarchal norms, women and children carved out spaces of influence and resilience. The world was primarily governed by men, yet women, though often relegated to the margins of historical accounts, wove themselves into the tapestry of daily existence with skill and subtlety. Their voices may not echo loudly in history's annals, but their presence thrived in folk tales and household ledgers, marking an indelible influence on the societies they tended. A man observed women deftly navigating a myriad of restrictions, asserting their roles within the family, and even occasionally influencing community decisions through marriage alliances or managing estates while husbands were away. They orchestrated their own narratives, their power playing out within a delicate dance of compliance and quiet assertion, each step a testament to their resilience. Among those unsung figures were the midwives and medicine women tasked with the perilous duty of ensuring safe childbirth, a necessity in a time lacking modern medicine. These women were keepers of knowledge, safeguarding remedies and techniques passed down over generations. Their status shifted with society's whims, sometimes revered for their healing touch, sometimes feared as supposed witches. It was their intimate acquaintance with the mysteries of life and death that placed them in a precarious position, balancing community dependence with an equal measure of suspicion. Parallel to healers, alewives ventured into the economic landscape, dominating the brewing industry at a time when ale was safer to consume than water. They not only brewed but often managed taverns, standing at the helm of bustling centers of social and economic activity. Their endeavors, however, attracted scrutiny. Accusations of adulteration or witchcraft shadowed their steps, an ironic twist considering their contributions to sustenance. Yet these women managed to wield influence, challenging economic norms from beneath the very roofs where their authority was questioned. Amidst the whisper of these endeavors lay a darker narrative, the specter of witchcraft accusations cast over women who dared to claim knowledge or autonomy. In turbulent times, communities sought scapegoats, often turning on those who strayed from prescribed roles. This early form of societal retribution against female nonconformity anticipated the tumult of later witch trials, casting a chilling light on medieval gender dynamics. Accusations could arise from petty jealousy or personal vendettas, rapidly escalating into dire charges that could end in torture or execution. The journey from girlhood to womanhood was swift, marked by societal expectations of eventual marriage and motherhood. From the moment they could walk, girls were prepared for their roles, learning household management and other practical skills. Noble girls might receive a broader education, learning to read and write, especially if they were destined to manage estates in their husband's absence. Yet childhood was fleeting, often concluding abruptly with the onset of puberty. Marriages were strategic alliances conducted not out of love but familial ambition, where girls became future mothers and partners in transactions of power and land. In the domestic sphere, motherhood became an immense undertaking. Women managed every aspect of household life, from food preparation to textile creation, with ingenuity and creativity. Motherhood was not just a role, but a life tethered to survival, perpetually shadowed by the dangers of childbirth and high child mortality rates. Yet in these domestic landscapes, women held sway, embodying unsung heroism that bolstered medieval society's continuity. Children, too, bore the weight of medieval expectations. They were not afforded idyllic years of play, but were often seen as small adults, integrated into labor and preparation for their futures. Noble children were groomed for leadership in battle, while peasant children learned the skills essential for survival. Boys often started apprenticeships as young as 7, committing to trades that promised not just livelihood, but entry into the complex social fabric of medieval life. Despite these looming responsibilities, children weren't devoid of joy. They found refuge in play, crafting toys from what little they had, and weaving stories shared under starlit skies. These glimpses of creativity and resilience offered a stark contrast to their labor-driven lives, proving that even amidst hardship, the spirit could soar. Education, where available, was a privilege fraught with inequity. Noble boys often studied under private tutors, preparing for governance or clerical roles. Peasant children gleaned practical knowledge, their skills honed by necessity rather than letters or numbers. Apprenticeships provided a hybrid of education and labor, framing a youth's path within a familial bond with their trade. In the shadows of faith and superstition, children learned to navigate a world tinged with fear of the supernatural. Stories of saints, miracles, and monsters were woven into the very fabric of their upbringing, teaching them the moral codes of their time. Fear of the devil and reverence for saints guided their actions and beliefs, structured by traditions designed to repel misfortune and appease celestial forces. Yet within this imposing framework of medieval culture, women and children persisted, crafting lives of stubborn resilience and often quiet rebellion. Women subverted domestic confines through nuanced defiance, sometimes steering family decisions or asserting independence. Children embraced the legacy of their forebears while infusing innovation. Each small rebellion a testament to their undaunted spirits. Even amidst strict societal roles and expectations, the human spirit thrived, finding ways to carve joy and agency from a world determined to constrain it. In the stark backdrop of daily struggles, festivals burst forth like brilliant colors on a drab canvas. These celebrations injected life and energy into the medieval world, transforming towns with stalls full of curious goods, jesters spreading laughter, and knights showcasing their splendor and skill. Local lords would often host feasts as grand gestures of power and generosity, offering the poor a brief respite from hunger. Church festivals merged with ancient pagan rites, creating a calendar where tales of toil blended with moments of jubilation. These vibrant gatherings drew together men of all trades and classes, momentarily easing the rigid divisions of medieval society. Regardless of status, everyone joined in the merriment, watching parades, competing in games, and sharing moments of joy. It was here, amidst the festive chaos, that men exchanged news, indulged in romance, and momentarily forgot the dangers surrounding them. Even as the risk of disease loomed large, the sounds of musicians, the taste of mead, and the echoes of laughter lingered long after the festivities ended, lighting the memory like beacons against otherwise gray days. In dance, medieval people found another release from life's burdens. This universal language of rhythm and movement broke down barriers as peasants and nobles alike found their rhythm in lively circles and elegant steps. While moralists condemned the dances as sinful, others saw them as forms of personal expression and rebellion. The split between formal courtly dances and spontaneous village revelries highlighted stark contrasts, the former with its structured gestures and status displays, the latter with earthy energy and communal joy centralized around a village bonfire. As the sun set, villagers gathered around fires where dance transformed into ritual, turning life's hardships into stories told in footwork and song. Amid arranged marriages, dowries, and strategic alliances, love persisted as both a rebellious and a cherished sentiment. Beyond the conventions and contracts, stories of passion and secret romance flourished. Noble lords penned poetry beneath moonlit skies, while playful flirtations rippled through village gatherings. Chivalric ideals, tales of knights and unattainable loves, captured imaginations, providing both inspiration and a lens for irony for a man. For the common folk, love might mean shared glances in fields or a stolen moment amidst toil, reminders that even in the most regulated societies, the heart often writes its own rules. Despite relentless labor and strict laws, play was essential in medieval life. Children fashioned toys from clay and wood, while adults indulged in board games like chess or gambled at dice. Play offered escape and strengthened community and family bonds, anchoring medieval lives with moments of shared laughter and joy. Grand tournaments showcased equestrian prowess, while rough-and-tumble games blurred the lines between sport and chaos, reflecting a creativity and resilience that sustained the people through bleak times. Music and storytelling ran like vital threads through the fabric of medieval life. From plain chant and troubadour tales to lute melodies and poignant ballads, music accompanied life's every occasion, uplifting spirits and recording the collective memories of people who often could neither read nor write. Bards and jongleurs were essential cultural transmitters, offering continuity and connection to the past and future as they traveled from courtly halls to dimly lit taverns, weaving stories of legendary heroes and moral tales into the lives of their audiences. Religion was ever present, shaping medieval existence not only through the fear of divine judgment, but also through personal practices that provided community and solace. While public spectacles dominated religious life, private prayers and tokens bolstered personal faith. Pilgrimages offered escape and renewal, leaving profound impacts on those seeking relief from worldly struggles. Commemoration, celebration, and community coalesced in rituals that mingled spiritual and temporal matters, underscoring a deep-seated need for connection, even amidst austere orthodoxy. Amid crises like pandemics and famines, communities displayed immense solidarity, forming networks of mutual dependency that were both necessary and nurturing. Charitable acts, guild support, and neighborly exchanges transcended conflict, turning shared hardships into bonding experiences. Close-knit villages relied not just on familial ties, but on alliances that were both formal and informal, driven by the understanding that survival often depended on collective rather than individual strength. Medieval people shared an intrinsic connection with nature, which shaped their lives beyond mere subsistence. Seasonal rites celebrated the cycles of planting and reaping, while forests, fields, and rivers served as markers of tradition and community law. Places of natural refuge offered solace and introspection amidst life's hardships, deepening the cultural respect for land and its rhythms, which was reflected in folklore and communal stories. Celebrations marked life events, intertwining joy and grief in vibrant rituals that turned personal experiences into communal gatherings. Wakes celebrated life even amidst death, using storytelling, music, and shared meals to strengthen community ties. Weddings and funerals alike blurred happiness with solemnity, rites of passage that reinforced bonds and celebrated continuity within a transient existence. In this world challenged by disease, hunger, and war, hope lingered like an unquenchable flame. Legends of saints and prophecy, dreams shaped by imagination, and stories of wonder fueled aspirations beyond everyday struggles for a man. Amidst turmoil, festivals and storytelling became acts of defiance against life's fragility, affirming that despite humanity's ephemeral condition, the flame of hope never truly extinguished, preserving a legacy of resilience and human spirit through the centuries.